Once again, it's on. You know what time it is. It's time to play some toss. Welcome, everyone, to episode 74 of the Tristain on Sports Show Toss. It is your main man, T-Square, Tristain Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us this week. What do we have on tap? Packers, major re-signing, possibly a major loss. The Bucks, undefeated after the All-Star break. Are they kind of turning the corner? Is a certain player doing the same? We got to get into college basketball because March Madness is upon us. And then the toss week, we have to talk about the NBA as a whole at the half. But you know how we get things started here on Toss. We get things started with the state of the state. And let's jump right into it. Let's get to those Green Bay Packers that we mentioned before with a major re-signing. We got to hit the Green Bay Packers with one of these. We got to do it. The Packers re-signed their factor back, one of the main cogs of that offense, dynamic back, Aaron Jones, to a 4-year, $48 million deal with $13 million guaranteed. I think most of us believed that it was a foregone conclusion that Aaron Jones was gone. I said here on Toss that I felt that at the time, looking at the cap situation that the Packers were in. And it's not like they're out of the woods. They still have some moves to make, but we'll get to that in a minute. I've said it multiple times on this program to all of you that I felt Aaron Jones played himself into a contract that the Packers could not afford. I also said that they would continue to talk with them to negotiate, and we would see where it goes. Now, whenever you change representation, as Aaron Jones did, and you go to a guy known as the Shark, Drew Rosenhaus, whose name has been all over free agency this offseason. He's getting multiple clients, multiple deals, and it's just his name is just popping up everywhere. But when you change your representation to get a guy like that, and you know that guy's reputation, that he's trying to get all the coins, and you look at the cap situation that the Packers were in, and like I said, they're not out of the woods. You just felt like, man, you would love to have him back, which I did state. But is it realistic that you can afford him? Now, signs of the re-signing should have happened, or they did happen. They were popping up all over the place. Restructures all over the place. Preston Smith restructured. Adrian Amos restructured. Devin Funchess gave back $750K to stay with the Packers. A lot of restructuring going on. You thought, okay, maybe not reading those as signs that he was going to get re-signed, but there were moves to get under the cap. At least they were on the surface. You would think that if they were able to get under the cap enough, that maybe, just maybe, they would be able to re-sign one of their own major free agents. But I didn't think, despite all the cap work that had happened at the time, that it would be possible for them to re-sign Aaron Jones or Corey Linsley. And we'll get to him in a minute because he got paid. I can genuinely say I did not see Aaron Jones re-signing with Green Bay. He actually took less money, according to his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, to stay with Green Bay. This is how much he believes in the team, how much he believes in the community, how comfortable he has become, and how he feels he can impact this team positively, as well as off the field in the community. Love Aaron Jones. I'm glad he's back. Like I said, he is a factor back. He helps to make that offense go. He is dynamic. He has improved every single season, continues to do so. You're excited to see how much better he can get in the future. To all the people out there poo-pooing the move and saying, oh, you're overpaying for a running back, and we have A.J. Dillon, and we will be fine with him, unless your name is Derrick Henry and you're a mutant 6'2", 240, 50, 60 plus pound running back that looks like he's built out of granite. You ain't toting all the carries. You need two backs in the NFL. That is what the majority of the teams play. They play with two backs. Yes, you have A.J. Dillon. And yes, you're excited about what A.J. the Sauce Dillon, you know I had to get that in there, what he can possibly bring to the table. You are licking your chops, speaking of Derrick Henry, about what he did against the Tennessee Titans on the Sunday night ball game. 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards in the snow. You're excited about the prospects of what he can bring to the table. And he's going to get a lot more snaps because of the re-signing of Aaron Jones that pretty much seals the fate of Jamal Williams. And he said his goodbyes via social media. You definitely hate to see him go. He's a great player. You know, he's a good player. He's a great person. I love what he brought to the table. He was able to start when Aaron Jones wasn't there. Great receiving back. Could run in between the tackles, could get around the corner. He's a good back, and he will land on his feet. He brings a lot of talent to the table. But you need two backs to play in this league. That is how winning is done. Alvin Kamara is splitting carries in New Orleans. Ezekiel Elliott is splitting carries with Tony Pollard in Dallas. Seattle's got a whole gang of running backs that they switch off in between. It's a two-back league. Like I said, unless your name is Derrick Henry, you're not toting the mail all game long on your lonely. Some people just got to smarten up, man. It's too easy to sit there and actually watch the games and watch the league. It's available just about everywhere to know that most teams are playing with two backs. As much as you like what A.J. Dillon brings to the table, he's not going to be a guy that's going to carry the mail by himself game in and game out. You lose a guy like Aaron Jones, you lose a dynamic part of that offense. Regardless of how great Aaron Rodgers is, regardless of how good Matt LaFleur has been in his first 2 years as a head coach, despite how good the system may be, despite how good Devontae Adams and how great my Devontae Adams may be, Aaron Jones is that dynamic piece that has learned how to do so much within that offense that other teams have to prepare for. You can split him out wide. He can run in between the tackles. He can get around the corner. His pass blocking has improved. His catching has improved. People got to be smarter, man. You're not going to roll with one back and one back only. Those days are over. Unless you're a Derrick Henry. Honestly, those days are over. So be happy that you were able to re-sign someone that you drafted, that you developed, that became really, really, really good. Could have went and tested the market and did a tiny bit, got some offers, but decided to stay put. That's a win. Now, a move I said that I would be more worried about, and that's not to say that I would not be worried about losing Aaron Jones. I felt that if you lost Aaron Jones, that money would go to re-sign a Corey Linsley, bring back a Jamal Williams. You got A.J. Dillon. You see what you get out of those two guys. Because, again, you're running two backs these days in the NFL. It's just what it is. You lose Corey Linsley as a result of these signings. He felt that he was going to be snapping the ball elsewhere. He said as much in an interview. All the signs were there. I think we knew that he was going to go. That's another guy who played himself into a contract that the Packers could not afford. The best center in all of the NFL. He goes to the LA Chargers, 5 years, $62.5 million, $26 million guaranteed, and that's within the first 2 seasons. He is now the highest paid center in the NFL. And he earned every penny of it. That's a tough loss. That is a loss that worried me more than losing Aaron Jones. Again, it's not to poo-poo anything that Aaron Jones has done. He is dynamic, and to have him back, to have that experience back within this offense, knowing what Aaron Rodgers wants, not having to plug somebody else into there and go through those sort of growing pains. This was the move that I was worried about. Because it jacks up your line a little bit. Replacing the play of Corey Linsley is not going to be easy. This is an elite line. It was made elite with all those guys on it. And the thing is, you're going to have even more problems because if David Bakhtiari is not going to be ready by training camp or even the regular season, if you have to put him on IR, miss the first 8 weeks, there's issues. There's issues. Because now you're missing your all-pro center. You're going to be missing your all-pro in Bakhtiari. That's 2 gigantic holes on that line. And you've got to keep number 12 upright. You've got to be able to block for Jones. You got to be able to block for Dillon. I'm a little bit worried about line continuity. But I'm excited to have Aaron Jones back. All this is stuff that can be figured out. And speaking of figuring it out, you're going to have to figure out how to get further underneath that cap because you're not quite there yet. I know Brian Gutekunst and Russ Ball are trying to work their magic. I think the next logical moves would be to give Devontae Adams a new contract, to extend him so you could spread that money out. Do the same thing with Zadarius Smith, spread that money out. And then you're going to have to do the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. All 3 of those guys are going to need a restructure in order to get this team under the cap and be able to handle the business that you need to handle. Teams aren't built just in free agency, despite what the New England Patriots are doing currently. Is there anybody they're not signing? Good grief. I think they shelled out like over $137 million in guaranteed money or some crazy number like that. They are reloading. We'll see how they turn out, but I digress. Adams, Smith, and Rodgers are going to be the next 3 guys that get a restructure. It's going to be absolutely necessary to do that. To get this team underneath the cap and to handle the business they need to handle. You have to sign your draft picks. You have to put together your practice squad. You've got things you still need to handle. The Robert Tonyan situation. Well, if a team makes an offer, are you going to match that offer? Well, you need to have the money for that. So there's a lot more work to do. Yes, you're happy that Aaron Jones is coming back. Yeah, your line took a ding with losing Corey Linsley. There's no doubt about it. If Bakhtiari is not ready to play at the beginning of the season, your line takes yet another ding. but you're still over the cap. You still got work to do. So that's something we'll definitely keep an eye on. It's worth keeping an eye on. But the Packers do re-sign Aaron Jones, and that is something to be happy about, despite what Packers Twitter will tell you. Continuing here on Toss State of the State, let's talk Milwaukee Bucks basketball. They are 2-0 since beginning the second half of the season after that All-Star break. A 133-122 victory over the Washington Wizards the other night. 25-14 overall, number 3 in the Eastern Conference. They continue to climb up those standings, not far behind the Brooklyn Nets and not far behind the 76ers, who are their opponents on Wednesday night. You win that game, you're one game behind them. So Bucks are still at, near the top of the East. They're still number 3. Giannis has just been lights out. 31, 15, and 10 last night for another triple-double. It is his 3rd straight. I know people out there are feeling like his name should be in the MVP conversation. I am one of those people, but I'm not going to stress over it. There have been many of deserving guys of the MVP who did not get it and did not even have a mention. This will be Giannis's year. I think he's more concerned with the championship anyway. A guy that I'm watching who looks to maybe have found something. You don't want to get too excited. It's just been a few games. But a guy that may be shaking off whatever funk he's been in. Brook Lopez. 22, 7, with 4 blocks last night against the Wizards. As we tape this program on a Tuesday night. Has he found his groove? If he has found that groove that he was in his first 2 seasons with Milwaukee, that makes this team better. He's good defensively. He's able to stretch the floor. Mike Budenholzer has been putting him on the block a little bit more. You noticed that last season. People forget he's a guy who made his living on the block before he learned how to really be consistent from 3. He's a big man in every sense of the term who changed his game to be able to play the modern game. He's more than adept on the block. If he's found his groove a bit, that's good for this team. It kind of goes into their team emphasis on getting better. You hear Giannis talking about it. In win or lose, as long as we left getting better, that's what we're aiming for. Mike Budenholzer has talked about it. Other players have talked about it. They're constantly trying to get better. And this is really what this is. Again, every week it seems like I go through the same talking points, but it's worth repeating. You went through the shortest offseason probably in NBA history, and it's not even probably, you did. There was no preseason, 0 preseason games. A very short, very fast free agency period and draft period. You had to get with these guys, learn these guys' game, and they're really still learning on the fly. A lot of things going on in the NBA currently. A lot of teams doing a lot of things that we did not think they'd be doing, but we'll get to that in a tall sweep. The emphasis tends to be on getting better. And the Bucks feel, the team, the coaches, they feel as if the trials and tribulations they're going through with all of that, which has affected their play on the court, it has forced them to figure it out because they're not as dominant as they have been. First 2 seasons under Mike Budenholzer. Teams have figured out their defensive scheme a bit. They've diversified themselves on offense. This is still very much a learning experience for everyone. How do you win when you're not as dominant as you used to be? How do you win when what you had been doing has been a bit figured out by the league? How do you grow to be consistent and start ascending at the right time? Start peaking at the right time, come playoff time. That's why, for me, this season is so interesting, because you had that first season under Mike Budenholzer, and the Bucks were so dominant, historically so. And it was exciting because it's like, man, it's pretty much automatic. You know, they could blow teams out by 20 or they could blow them out by 40. Either way, it's going to be a W. Then you had that heartbreak in the Eastern Conference Finals against the eventual champion Raptors. Fast forward to the second season. Nobody's really looking forward to the regular season, because they said, hey, if they were dominant like that in the first season, you're pretty much bringing everybody back. They're going to be dominant in the second season. And they were. Everybody was pointing to the playoffs. What's going to happen in the playoffs? And then coronavirus happened. Then the shutdown. Then the rebirth in the bubble. And the bubble wasn't so kind to the Bucks. Then you enter this season, a whole roster overturn. Short off season. 0 preseason games. No real time to get acclimated to your new teammates. Not enough time to get acclimated to the changes that Mike Budenholzer wanted to make. Now it's baptism by fire. You learn through the battles. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. But you live. You live to fight another day. I got that from Friday. But it's true. You're going to go through the battles. These battles should make you better. And I think this season that they're going through, and I'm talking to Bucks, they're going through a lot of battles that they hadn't had to go through the first 2 seasons under Mike Budenholzer. I don't want to say they took the dominance for granted, because they went out there, they worked hard, and they were just dominant. But it seemed almost like they were on cruise control. And how much do you actually learn when you're that dominant? Not enough to get you to the NBA Finals and win a championship, apparently. But that's what makes this regular season so much more intriguing. Now, I'm not saying that I don't like seeing the Bucks dominate. Those first 2 seasons under Mike Budenholzer were fun. But it didn't really equal playoff success. Yes, they got to the Eastern Conference Finals in this first season. They got to the second round in the second season. What they do in the playoffs is what everybody's going to point to. But it's the learning, it's the grind, it's the battling, it's the learning how to win in different situations that intrigues me with this season. So the team has an emphasis on getting better, and they feel that these battles and the trials and tribulations they're going through of learning all this new stuff and learning their teammates and having the ups and downs, not quite having the same dominance that they had the first 2 seasons, is going to better them for the playoffs. We'll see. I can see that logic. It's what makes this regular season so intriguing to see what they have learned, what's working, what isn't. Is Budenholzer going to continue to make adjustments as he needs to? How will this team do with those adjustments? How will they execute? It's all very intriguing, which makes this team a very, very interesting watch, and will continue to do so. 34 games remaining in the regular season. You want them to keep that 3 seed if they can, go up, because you don't want to have an extended losing streak and fall into that 7 spot and have to go through the play-in tournament. You don't want to get your playoff spot snatched in a tournament. I don't want them to incur that. So hopefully they can stay in that top tier of the Eastern Conference. Again, 25-14 overall, number 3 in the East currently as we record this program, with a battle against the 76ers on Wednesday night without Joel Embiid, who has a hyperextended knee. You wanted that game. You wanted everybody to be healthy for that game. You're not going to have that this go-round. But something tells me they may see each other again come postseason. We'll see. Continuing, here on Tall State of the State, let's talk some college basketball. March Madness is upon us. March Madness is upon us. It's an exciting time of year. Just really, really, really exciting. You're just hoping everybody stays safe in their bubbles. The women being in the Texas bubble, which they're calling the Tubble. The men going to Indianapolis, they're in that bubble. So you hope everybody stays safe, stays healthy, plays well. The Marquette women's basketball team, as I said, they lost in the Big East tournament final soundly. but it's a UConn team. So, I mean, you had to expect that. But you're the runner-up in the Big East. And somehow, some way, the NCAA decides to give you a 10 seed. They'll face off against the 7 seed and 14-9 overall Virginia Tech Hokies. So let me get this straight. Marquette went 19-6. They were 14-4 in the Big East. And they're the 10 seed? They were the runners-up in their conference tournament to UConn, dominant UConn, and they get a 10 seed against a 14-9 team. Like, make it make sense. This is the thing that just perplexes me about the women's tournament, is that just the seeding. Everybody complains about the seeding in the men's game, and we're talking about that in a second. They talk about the seeding in the men's tournament. The women's tournament has some of the most outlandish seeding I've seen. This reminds me of the UW Green Bay women's team, who year in, year out were pretty dominant. I'm talking, this was teams that won like 30-plus games, or high 20s, winning their conference in the regular season, winning their conference tournament. Really good teams winning that many games, 28, 29, and 30 ball games, and getting double-digit seeds every year, having to play on the road, away from home, far away from home. It just perplexes me every single year. I think the women have a good chance at winning that ball game. Marquette women's basketball team. And it's not due to records. Their shooting ability is better than Virginia Tech's. They rebound a bit better. I think they can go and do that. The Badgers men's team, the only other team to make it to their field, 17-12 overall. They'll go up against North Carolina, the Tar Heels, who are 18-10 overall. Wisconsin, the 9 seed. North Carolina, the 8 seed. I don't know why. I'd make that make sense. Make it make sense. The Big Ten was a far, far better conference. Far better conference than the ACC was. And you had teams bowing out of the ACC tournament because of COVID. Duke had to pull out. Virginia had to pull out. But somehow, some way, they got a higher seed than the Badgers. Go figure. I mean, look, the Badgers could have been like Belmont, who didn't even make the tournament. And Belmont won 26 games. Make that make sense. Keys to victory for the Badger men. There's no way nice to put this, so let's just put it out there. North Carolina is an atrocious three-point shooting team. I think they're like towards the bottom of the nation in three-point percentage. They're awful from three. So because they brick a lot of threes, that means there's a lot of rebounding opportunity, which they happen to be good at. So they get second chance points. The Badgers have to be able to rebound. North Carolina rebounds at a 43 rebound per game clip. Badgers 33. You have got to rebound. If they're going to brick from three, because let's be clear, they're going to launch them. If North Carolina is going to brick from three, you have to get yourself in good position and grab those long rebounds. You have to do it. Big thing beyond rebounding for me, no scoring droughts. No scoring droughts. We have seen the Badgers just go through just mind-numbing scoring droughts. Just mind-numbing scoring droughts. It's cost them games. Can't have that. You have to be more consistent. Guys are going to have to show up. Trice is going to have to show up. Micah Potter is going to have to show up. Brad Davison is going to have to show up. Nate Reavers, you got to give them something. Ford's got to show up. They have to be more consistent. And I know Potter, he had an okay Big Ten tournament. But overall, about the last 5 or 6 games, none of the guys that I mentioned have really been lights out. It's tournament time. You all have to show up. And you got to finish it with defense. Yeah, you have to do it. You have to do it. March Madness is upon us. It's win or go home time. There is no next week. If you're going to do it, you just need to do it. Seniors, this is your last stand. I think the Badgers can get that one, but I thought they could maybe sneak and get a win against Iowa in the Big Ten tournament, and that didn't happen either. You just don't know what you're going to get from the Badgers. This rendition of the Wisconsin Badgers basketball team. You just don't know what you're going to get from them. They're too up and down. So I can't confidently say they're going to beat North Carolina. North Carolina can have one of those days where, they're atrocious from three, but maybe they're wrong that day. Or maybe they continue to be atrocious from three, but the Badgers can't rebound. You give North Carolina all those second chance points. I have not filled out my bracket yet. I plan on doing that after a little bit more of a deep dive and some soul searching and some wringing of the hands and some pacing back and forth and craft T-Squared's bracket of destiny. Look out for that on social media at the20double on Instagram and Twitter. Also on tossnationmedia.com. I'll post it out there when it's finished, because it's not finished yet. But if you're going to do it, you got to do it now. Now's the time. If you're the Badgers. And that's the state of the state. Packers re-sign Aaron Jones. They lose Corey Linsley. There's going to be a little bit of uncertainty about the offensive line next season, but you have your dynamic factor back in tow. The Bucks are 2-0 since the All-Star break, 25-14 overall, number 3 in the East, and holding strong and hopefully getting better. In college basketball, March Madness is upon us. Marquette can get the win. The Marquette women's basketball team can get the win against Virginia Tech. And the Badger men, you have a fight on your hands and a tough draw with North Carolina. You're too inconsistent for me to even sit here and make a prediction on it right now. Let's move on to the toss sweep. TossNationMedia.com, your home for the Toss brand of sports. Truthful, opinionated, passionate sports. It's what you deserve. The NBA has come back from their All-Star break For the final 36 games, as we mentioned before, the Bucks are 2-0 currently in that stretch. 34 games remaining for them in most teams. I also mentioned that there's some teams in the NBA currently doing some things that we did not expect them to be doing this season. Let's start off over in the Western Conference and let's talk NBA standings, man, because there's a lot going on. These are the standings as through March 15th's action. So some of these records can and probably will have changed by now. Number 1 in the Western Conference is the Utah Jazz. 28-10. They've had some tough losses. Donovan Mitchell went on he said it with his chest. He's sick of it. Officiating has been wishy-washy. We saw that last night in the Nets and Knicks game where Julius Randle went up for a three and the ball was slapped out of his hands, and that means he can gather it and dribble again and go up for another shot, but they said he traveled because they swore they didn't see the ball get slapped out of his hands, even though every single replay shows the ball getting slapped out of his hands. But I digress. But the Jazz are number 1. Who had the Jazz number 1? I had them making the playoffs, but I most definitely did not have them being number 1 in the Western Conference. I knew the Jazz were a good squad. They played really good defense. They're getting better offensively. Had no idea they had number 1 in the East. Number 1 in the Western Conference in them. So that's definitely a surprise. Another surprise, who was a bit of a wild card for me when I was predicting who would make the playoffs, before the season began. The Phoenix Suns are number 2 in the West. Now, I said they were a wild card because they finished undefeated in the bubble. 8-0 in the bubble. Devin Booker was just hot as hot could be. They make the trade for Chris Paul. He's made them better. Did not see them being number 2 in the Western Conference at all. The Lakers, number 3. They were at one point the occupants of the number 1 seed, but they are what they are. They're missing Anthony Davis currently. Like I said, he is really the straw that stirs the drink, honestly, maybe even more so than LeBron. And that's no poo-poo on him. He's one of the greatest of all time. Love LeBron. But Anthony Davis is really the key cog on that team. So they've been really up and down since losing him to injury. They hope he'll be back soon. A team that's kind of scuffling right now, number 4 in the West, Los Angeles Clippers. Crazy. The Lakers and Clippers are right next to each other. They've been struggling. They've been struggling a little bit of mid-season struggles for them. You think they'll get it ironed out, or this just could be who they are. The Denver Nuggets, another team that has played well and then not played so well in stretches. They're number 5 in the Western Conference. That's still a really good team. Jokic is a legitimate MVP candidate. The Portland Trailblazers, I said that team were to ever be healthy, completely healthy, they could be top tier in the Western Conference. Well, that's the problem. They haven't been fully healthy. They've been missing C.J. McCullough. They miss Yusef Nurkic. They just continue to miss guys. The one constant that's been there is Dame. Damian Lillard. He's the one constant that's there all the time. They're number 6 in the West, 22-16. Number 7, the San Antonio Spurs, 20-16 currently. I would have to go back and look at my predictions. I don't know if I had the Spurs being in the Western Conference playoffs this season, but there they are. Popovich still knows how to coach them up. Number 8, the Dallas Mavericks. I thought they may be a little bit higher, but they're sitting there at number 8. And we'll go through 9 and 10 as well because the play-in tournament has teams 7 through 10 from each conference, and they're essentially playing for those final 2 playoff spots. Number 9 currently, Golden State Warriors at 20-20. Again, this is through March 15th action. And at number 10, at 17-19 are the Memphis Grizzlies. in a one-game scenario for a playoff spot, Steph Curry gets hot, it's over. It's over. They could definitely sneak in there and steal one of those spots, but that's going to be interesting. And obviously, it's gonna juggle. It's gonna flip around a little bit. The standings are. Those play-in tournaments are going to be really, really interesting. But a lot of surprises in here, and I definitely think I had the Warriors in the field, but that was before Klay Thompson got hurt. That was before Klay Thompson got hurt. So for them to still be hanging around that 8th spot, to be in position for the play-in tournament to possibly play themselves into the postseason, that's a good job. They're at 500 and still learning and still growing. Let's move over to the Eastern Conference. A couple of surprises here as well. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, the Philadelphia 76ers at 27-12. I knew once Doc Rivers was hired as the head coach that it was going to change the way they played and change their mentality. You know, Doc is one of the best, and he definitely gets everything he can out of every single one of his players. So I knew that was going to be a big change. So I knew they were going to kind of vault toward the top of the conference. So that's not really shocking for me. The Nets, excuse me, the Brooklyn Nets, 27-13. Again, when you have a healthy KD and you have a healthy Kyrie, you add in a former MVP and James Harden during the season, and now you have a Blake Griffin who's been bought out by the Pistons joining you. You're going to be towards the top of the Eastern Conference. So that, again, that is no surprise for me. I figured they would be in that field. The Bucks, obviously, you knew they were going to be in that field. That is not a shock for me. They're at number 3. I know some people think that they should be a little bit more dominant than what they were, but again, a whole roster overturn, learning new things, you know, the offseason situation, you got to give them some time. But for them to be sitting there at number 3 with the chance to climb is phenomenal at this point. The Miami Heat, they got off to a little bit of a rough start, but they've been hot as of late. Dangerous team. Dangerous team. Jimmy Butler is playing some MVP-like basketball right now. The Celtics, 20-18. I thought they may be a little bit higher than that, but it's not a shock that they're in the playoff field to me. Here are some shocks, these last 3. Charlotte, number 6 in the East, 20-18. I knew they had some pieces, but I just thought that maybe they might be a year away. Did not see them in the playoff field currently. Another team I definitely did not see in the playoff field currently. The New York Knicks. Again, another team with some young pieces. Tom Thibodeau coming in as coach. You knew they're going to make them defend. They do have one of the top defenses in all the NBA. Did not see them here at this point. Did not see them here at this point. The number 8 seed currently is the Atlanta Hawks, or are the Atlanta Hawks, at 19-20. Again, I would have to go back and look at my standings or my predictions. I thought I had them as a fringe team, play-in team worthy, and they're right in that. I mean, they're right in that range. Again, 7 through 10 go to the play-in tournament. Number 9, the Chicago Bulls. I did not see them vying for a playoff spot right now. Again, play-in tournament, 7th seed through 10th seed. So they are very much in playoff contention. And the Indiana Pacers, I thought they would be firmly entrenched into a playoff spot. Did not see them hang out there in the 10th spot. And just because it's so close, let's go to the 11th spot, which is held by the Raptors at 17-22. Now, they're still within play-in range, so they're not completely out of it. They're still vying for a playoff spot. So, they're not out of it by any means. But I definitely did not have them there at 11th in the East. As you mentioned, and you heard me mention many times before, those playoff play-in tournaments are going to be something. Those are going to be something. Give teams new life. Give them a chance to get into the playoffs. Buy some time for coaches. It's going to be interesting to see if any teams get their playoff spots snatched from them in that tournament, talking the 7 and 8 seed. It's going to be exciting, man. We're in the second half of the season. We're getting close. It ain't quite playoff time yet, but we're on the road there. Well, y'all, that'll do it for me. That was episode 74 of the Tristain Sports Show Toss. You know where to find me on social media. At the 20 double, at the number 2, the number 0, and the word double on both Instagram and Twitter. Facebook.com/T on Sports Show is your home for the Tristain on Sports Show on Facebook. And TossNationMedia.com, your home for the Toss brand of sports. Truthful, opinionated, passionate sports. It's what you deserve. Check us out, TossNationMedia.com. But, as I said before, it's time for me to get on up out of here. This is T-Squared, Tristan Thomas, reminding all of you to keep it moving forward. Always forward. Forward always. Until next week, so long from Toss.